Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today I have with me Shannon Cassidy. Shannon is the founder and CEO of Bridge Between, a certified women-owned business celebrating 25 years of helping leaders and teams thrive. A certified executive performance coach, keynote speaker, and high-performance team facilitator, Shannon is an authority on behavioral change and the transformative power of generosity in leadership. She's also the host of the ROG, Return on Generosity podcast. Shannon amplifies the message that generosity isn't just a virtue, it's a competitive advantage. Looking forward to talking about that. She believes that small intentional acts of generosity, whether through time, attention, knowledge, or opportunity, can revolutionize a workplace culture, drive engagement, and unlock extraordinary business results. Recognized for her practical, impactful, and authentic approach, Shannon is a sought-after speaker for conferences, leadership summits, and corporate events. She's the author of Grounded in Gratitude, Vibe, and the 5-Degree Principle. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you, Abby. It's great to be with you again.
I know, it's so fun to be here.
Yeah, and speaking of ROG, we're episode 216. We titled it Get Out of Your Mind.
Wouldn't that be lovely for us all to be able to do this all the time?
Out of your mind in a good way.
Not a good neighborhood.
It's great to be together again.
Yes. I'm excited to be talking to you because, you are a very busy woman and you have accomplished, as in past, a lot and continue to be doing a lot in the world. So let's start by, kind of tell us a little bit about how you found yourself on the path that you're on today.
Yeah, I think I'm very introspective. So I think your intuition incubator is a great space to be in with you. Because I do believe in trusting my intuition or my knowing, my inner knowing. And, I was in corporate America. I was, a leader and did the things that kind of look like success on paper, but it just didn't feel like this was what I was meant to do. And then my husband was working for a company that was moving us. And so that was like a great opportunity to just say, should I keep doing what I'm doing or start something different? So 25 years ago, we moved from Boston to Pennsylvania. And that's when I just decided, I've always given everything I do, 110% of myself. So why not do something that I really think is a utility of my strengths? Like I recognize that in previous roles, I could use some of the things that I think was my potential, but not to the extent that I thought would be most advantageous to people around me. It was like a fraction of my job. I wanted to make it a bigger fraction. And I know that as an entrepreneur, there's a book called The E-Myth that somebody had me read early on, which is the myth is that you start your own business and you get to do all the things that you love to do all the time. And that's partially true because you do get to do more of the things you love, but you also have to do all the other things that you don't love. So, I did learn that over time. But when I started Bridge Between, it was a great opportunity for me to say, what are some of the things that I would just do voluntarily for other people? What are the things that bring me the most energy? I was very in tune with the things that I loved and the things that I loathe. And so that actually has helped me become a strengths-based coach, because I do believe that that's a signal that we're utilizing our strengths is when we feel energized and we're really insatiable about something, a topic or a kind of, even if it's physically and mentally hard, it's it's energizing and rewarding. And that's how I feel about coaching and team development and keynote speaking is these are things that I just love to do.
Yeah. And, to your point, I really just want to highlight that's the courage it takes and how amazing it was that you were able to sort of say, no, let me just think about what I love to do. Because I think so many people just, what do I love to do? That's not relevant.
Right. Yeah. I love to travel. I love to cook. Should I be a chef? And I'm I don't know, maybe.
Right. Maybe you should. Maybe there's a way to make that work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your work focuses on generosity and bridging gaps. So how did these become central to your mission?
Yeah. Well, again, back to just being quiet. I think for your listeners who are intrigued by what do I love to do and how can I do more of that in my work? I think it starts with just being quiet and letting your intuition speak to you and tell you more about like, what does that look like? And give me examples of times that you felt that energy and that kind of thing. So for me, I always recognized, like, I guess it just, I'm a pattern recognizer, and I would notice like, okay, they say these things, but then they do these things. Like that is a mismatch. So
Yeah.
like, how could I either help them to understand that what they're saying is incongruent with what they're doing, or help them change their behavior to do the things that are in sync with the things that they say they really want to do? And that they meaning like a leader or an organization, like culturally, or, you know, our principles, our practices, our strategy, just like the gaps between like, here's what we know is smart, or you know, forward thinking, but then we kind of get stuck in our old patterns. And I know your show is all about like being stuck in that unconscious kind of pattern behavior. So I thought like everybody thinks like that, right?
Yeah.
Because you know how it is, like when you see, when the way that you see the world, you think every, you know. And then I realized that that was not how everybody sees the world, and I thought, okay, well, maybe that's a way that I could add value. And the subtitle for Bridge Between, or the tagline, I guess you call it, is connecting potential to performance. And I really
Mhm.
think that that nails it, because it's like I always see like there's more that that person, or more that that team, or more that that organization can contribute. Like they have all these raw ingredients, and they're just not yet put together in a way that makes them super powerful, or even greater than they imagine. Because sometimes like they set a vision and they go for it, and then they achieve that, and it's like, yeah, but that's not even the end, right? That's like the next step, that's the next milestone. So just, I think that that desire to figure out like what is in the gap, because I don't always know, like requires like inquiry and curiosity, and just digging deeper. And then once you recognize like, oh, these are some of the either patterns of behaviors or beliefs, or, you know, constraints or barriers that we have to figure out strategically how to overcome, so that we can go get to that next step. So I think of that both for like individuals, like executives that I get to coach, teams, like I said, organizations, but even like one to one, when I'm helping people mediate a conflict. Like
Yeah.
it's the bridge between the two people that I
Yeah.
because I do see myself as like a catalyst or a access way to something, but temporarily. That's why I like the bridge, because it's not like I'm going to stay the whole journey with you. I just want to help you get to that next place, and then wish you well, and love the updates. I love when former clients reach out, but the purpose is not to stay with them on the journey. It's to get them
Mhm.
to the other side.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I interviewed someone named Red Hawk a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about the difference between. This is a little off topic, but it's kind of the same thing. Like because he studied with a lot of masters, and he was talking about the difference between like a master and religion. And he was saying, religion never lets you go. A master, which he's not claiming to be, in any
Yeah.
way, but his masters, he's like, a master develops something in you.
Mm.
Conscience at the highest, order is what you're looking for,
Yes.
striving for.
Yes.
And
Your own
then
knowing.
once you have that, moves on, you know.
Mhm.
And so I love that. And I love how I totally agree. You did nail it with that bridging potential and performance,
Mhm.
because and that gap, I mean, I love how you're looking at that. It's so true, right? We all have that gap,
Yeah.
and what's driving that gap,
Mhm.
could be any number of things. And I know you use a lot of different tools. I
Yeah.
use different tools. We were just talking about the saboteur assessment from Positive Intelligence, and all the different tools that there are to really say, okay, well, what is in your gap? Like
Mhm.
because most of the times we can see our potential. We know, like people know, and
Yes.
it's just like, but I keep sabotaging myself.
Right.
Something's
Right.
in the way.
And as a strength-based coach, I think it's important to recognize that, and not assume that I need to go then fix those things. Like I need to go be better at those things. I deeply believe that we need to own our strengths and our weaknesses or flaws or whatever gaps. but also like, who do you need? Because I think it just creates the most beautiful image in my mind of why we need each other and why teams are so significant. Because the things that drain me or I'm just naturally not great at, I could work at them all day, every day. And believe me, I've done that. I've tried to perfect the things that I am really bad at, and I've just become less bad at them.
Right.
Right? I'm never going to be great. Yeah, I will never be the person that you should call for like accounting advice. That's just not who I am. But I have found people who have that giftedness, and that is a beautiful marriage, right? Because I give them an opportunity to do the work they love. They get to support me and round out my edges. So I just think for us to be thoughtful about who do we need. And when you talked about assessment tools, my favorite current assessment tool is the 6 types of working genius
Oh
by
yeah.
Patrick Lencioni.
Hmm.
And it's like these 6 geniuses. Of the 6, there's 2 that are your genius, which are the things that bring you the most joy and fulfillment. That's how it's described. It's joy and fulfillment, which is like, who doesn't want more of that at work,
Right.
specifically at work? I mean, it works in your personal life as well, but I work with a lot of corporate teams, so it's mainly focused on like, how do we get our work done? But then you've got these 2 areas of competency, which are the things that you can do. You don't love to do it, or you wouldn't have to do that all the time, but it's like you absolutely can lend a hand in that area. But then there's these 2 areas of frustration. And those are the things that you just don't
Yeah.
love to do. And it's interesting then when you get to see your results, like, how often am I playing in my areas of frustration? And how could I make even a slight, the 5 degrees that I often talk about is like, what's just like the incremental, even if you could just 1% more in your areas of genius, like
Yeah.
what could that do for you energetically? And then how could you trust other people more? Like the people who love to do the things that weaken you. So I just think it's a great opportunity for us to not only be introspective, but for us to trust and invite other people in to join us.
Yeah, there's so much goodness in what you just said. And one of the things that struck me is because, I work a lot around understanding the inner world. And as we talked about the subconscious and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things you just said was, it's not that the goal is not to say, well, you know, these are bad things about me. I can't do this, so that's
Yeah.
bad. No, it's about embracing yourself and just being kind of honest about like this is not really my strength. And that's okay. That means I need other people. That gives you an opportunity to be vulnerable. It gives you an opportunity to stretch and grow in different
Mhm.
ways. And to recognize, as you said, the beauty of the team, which I think of, the beauty of our inner world, like all the
All the
personality
parts.
parts that are there
Yes.
playing. And it's so funny because we were talking about before we got on the show, we now share a producer, and I was saying like, oh my god, I didn't realize that I never had anyone on my team
Yeah.
that had these
Yes.
skills that I don't have. And I,
Yep.
kept having people that we all had these wonderful big vision creative skills, but not like also the ability to, and it's to your point, it's stuff I'm not good at. I don't like it. I can practice and practice and practice, but I'll only get less bad at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the freedom, and I think this will speak to listeners because so many of the times we just beat ourselves up because we're not doing something well or the way we want to. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what if that's just not your genius? Like, what
Right.
if that's just not?
And who
And
can you find? Right. And so that's a shout out to Evergreen Studios for those
yes,
listening who want the kind of support that Abby and I now have. And it's a beautiful thing, right? Because then you get to use your energy in the ways that best serve the people from your areas of strength and greatness and your superpowers or whatever you want to call it. It's like each of us has been given a handful of those things. And I think what a shame for us to pursue, I don't know, perfection. Is that what we're trying to
right,
accomplish? It seems like when you say it out loud, it's like that makes no sense, but we
right,
do it, right? So I think just like, enjoying a show like yours where it's encouraging you to trust yourself. Like
yeah,
it's good, right? You have an inner knowing. It's like
yeah.
give that more validity than I think sometimes we often do.
Yeah, so speaking of that and your show, let's talk about generosity because one of the things that talked about when we talked about generosity was like I feel like that is when you're really plugged into your inner knowing, you are
Yeah.
automatically generous. Some people say, "Well, this is a generous person, this is not a generous person." I feel like at our heart, we are all that way. It's just we're not regulated. And when we get regulated and we get in our genius and we get in our zone or whatever it is, we get calmed down,
Mm-hmm.
we are more generous in general. But I would really love to hear more about how how this came about for you. Like, why generosity? Why return on generosity? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
How did you begin this whole journey?
Oh, thanks for that question. Well, I'll just share openly that I am a woman of faith, and I believe that my creator created me the way I am, and the way you are, and everybody the way they are. And I also believe that part of how all of us were created, not some of us, but all of us, is out of love and with love. So I deeply believe that love is within all of us. And when we, like namaste is the light in me sees the light in you, right? That's a loving way to connect with someone. It's like the love in me sees the love in you. And I was just being reflective about when do I feel at my best? What are those magic moments in my life that I think, gosh, this was like almost a fantasy. Like it almost wasn't like real. And the common denominator, back to pattern recognition, the common denominator for all of my highlight moments was when I was in some way, shape, or form giving to someone else, like be that
Mm.
time or energy. And I don't just mean financial giving, because I do think that unfortunately generosity and financial charity or philanthropy gets like commingled. So I want us to just like separate those and think about generosity as, are you giving your time, your attention, your energy? When you give forgiveness, when you give people opportunities, when you give people feedback, you give people a break, you give people privacy. Those are
Right.
all things we can give people that is so generous. And back to the way that we were designed, I think that it's just inherent in us. And you see this, sadly, you see this often in a crisis. Like when there's a crisis that happens, like people don't have the time to think about like what's the right thing to do. They just do the right thing, because I think we're
Mm.
wired. We're wired for compassion, we're wired for love, we're wired for generosity. So if we could, back to, it's almost like the working geniuses in a way, where it's like if we could just find even 1% more opportunity to be thinking of others instead of thinking of ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes the person that we have to be generous to is ourselves. So I don't want us to be like off the table here. I do, like, my assumption is that we are taking care of ourselves, and for some that may not be true yet. So you first have to take care of yourself before you go charging around taking care of other people. But I think it's part of how we're wired. And when we have opportunities, or we create opportunities to be generous, and it might just be opening the door for someone, and going into, like, there's a chain in at least in the Northeast, called Wawa. It's like
Mm.
a, gas station. Like people go get their hoagies and coffee and what have you. And there's something about Wawa where everybody always opens the door for you. And there's almost like this culture around Wawa that's generous in my mind. And so when I go there, I always just like get filled up by that, because it's just like nobody said that that's how it should be, but that's just how it is. But I think, greeting somebody or giving them the parking spot or whatever it is. I mean, those are just small little things that you could do that could give you that boost. And then the return on generosity is just so interesting to me, because it's counterintuitive, because you would think if I give what I have less, right? Like I had this thing, I gave it away, now I have less. But the way it works is that you then have more, because you feel so good, and it's far great that like the what you get is far greater than like the tangible thing that you had, even the time. And those who do that know that, and those who haven't yet leaned into it, I just challenge you to trust the ROG magic, and give, and just see how you feel. Like look, we have 200 and however many episodes of ROG, and every single person has hit this from a different angle, because their life is different and their experience of it is different. But the similarities are that they get so much reward for being generous. That's just a word I'm using for, some people could use the word compassionate, or I've heard people use the word empathy. I think you're talking about empathy, and like however you want to frame it, but it's just it's the getting out of your own needs and everything being about you, and thinking about like, how might I be able to, positively impact the situation, even slightly, by bringing a different attitude, or maybe adding some levity, or listening. Like there's all these different ways
Yeah.
that we could do it, and that's what draws me to it.
Yeah. Oh God. Okay. Now I get to unpack so much of that because you said so much there. I love how you're focusing on, this idea that it's not, because we do think of it in terms of money. It's like, well, I'm not in a position to be generous in this way or whatever. And you're giving such simple ways, right? Like, and I was even thinking, it's generous to give someone grace.
Yes.
Like these are all ways in which we're all generous. And what I love about that is it gives us an opportunity to say, wait a minute, I am generous. When I was referred to your podcast, the person that referred me to you said that I was generous. And I was like, really? Like,
You're like,
that's
I
not,
am.
I
Yeah.
am like, that's not what I was told. That's not my story. But like, if you look at it in this way, it's like, yeah. And I love what you said about how when there's a tragedy, we're automatically generous. And you're so right. It's because we're not thinking. Our mind
Right.
hasn't got in the way. It's
Exactly.
just like, this is just what you do, what needs to
Yeah.
happen,
The right thing to do, and what the right thing to do. You don't have to wonder about that.
You don't
You
have to
know.
wonder about
Mhm.
it. And what you said too, I loved what you said when you were saying, you're a woman of faith, and the light in me sees the light in you. And I have to share from that same episode, that Red Hawk episode, I saw like 3 Red Hawks, one in my dream and one on a hike. And I was like, oh my God, what is the sign here? I was like, maybe I'm supposed to go listen to this episode again. So I went back and I listened to it. And what I heard was, because there's so much to hear from this particular person. What I heard that time was, he was talking about how we are, God is love. And that is that at the end of the day, that's us. Like if you peel
Right.
away everything, we are love. And what he said was, when you're talking about self-observation, which is what he talks about, you're asking this question, like, what in me is preventing the manifestation of God's love coming through me in this moment with this person? What is preventing me in this moment with this person from God's love manifesting in me?
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's so
Yeah.
right. Because,
That's it.
and
That's
that's it,
exactly right.
because what we're saying is like at your core, that is it. But the life gets in the way, and ego gets in the way, and personality parts get in the way, and stress gets in the way, and all of that
Mhm.
stuff. And that's normal.
Totally normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
So,
think just reminding yourself to look for opportunity, because if you look for opportunities for anything, if you look for an opportunity to be upset or angry or frustrated, you will certainly find those. And I think those kind of come more readily to our sensibility. But if we're training our brains to look for opportunities to see the goodness in other people, to try to, like in my bathroom, I have a sign that says, like, make someone feel your smile, or something about like your smile can make all the difference. Just like that's the smallest little thing you could do. But we're not smiling if we're stuck in our head, which is why like your get out of your mind is so important. Because if we get out of our mind, then we can be present. And if we were present, then we would see these other opportunities. So I think, like you're saying, our humanity is like, we're not going to see it all the time. But if we try to train our brain to see it even 1% more than we did yesterday, that would be progress.
or take it the other way. Take your philosophy first and use generosity as the vehicle to get out of your mind,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes,
Because the easiest way out of your mind is to focus on someone else,
absolutely.
And so what is the small little thing that you can do?
Yeah.
So tell us, like, I'd love to hear some examples of what you've seen of the return on generosity, right? Like you work with a lot of leaders, you implement this in, working with teams. What do you what do you see? What are some examples of like the return on generosity that you've seen when you've taught a leader or a team to really do this?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I'll think of something simple so that it's like attainable to everybody. And I think one of the best ways that people can be generous is to provide thoughtful feedback. Because
Mhm.
I think the two things that are in the leader's control is one is setting clear expectations, which is also generous. Kindness is clear. So sometimes people think kindness is niceness, and niceness means that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't think that's kind. I don't think that's generous. I think that is disabling somebody from being their best self. Like they have that potential, and you're robbing them of the opportunity to at least attempt to, live into that potential. So I think for a leader to be clear about expectations, here's what I need from this role or this project or this system, and then the helpful, honest, clear feedback. And I have seen this time and time again that when leaders take the time to prepare for that feedback session, and this is both constructive and positive. Interesting side note on this for feedback. There's a 6-to-1 positive to constructive ratio that leaders need to practice in order to really be masterful at giving feedback. 6-to-1 positive to constructive, because I think sometimes
Mhm.
we only bother to prepare for feedback when it's something that's going wrong and we were like, oh, how do I say that, they're going to be upset. And but if we thought about all the times that we were delighted by somebody's behavior, and then we were really specific about what they did that was so incredible, and then especially if we could do that publicly so that the rest of the team understands, like, these are the things that we reward and celebrate here, that would be great. So I have seen situations where leaders have done the due diligence of preparing for both positive and constructive feedback, and have given the constructive feedback in a way that the person could hear it as intended and knew, like, yeah, I could see why that was a problem, and got the help that they needed, not from the leader. Interestingly, in this one case that I'm thinking of, they got it outside of the leader. And then they made the progress, and they were aiming to become a managing director, an MD in their firm. And so that was like the what's in it for them. But there was a gap, and there, I always say, like, you want to watch out for your butt, because it's like, Shannon is great, but
Yeah, right.
like, whatever comes after that, you gotta, like, so what are they saying about me when I'm not in the room is something that people ought to understand, and not from a paranoid perspective, but more from like a real feedback perspective. And we had a guest on ROG, Tessa White, who wrote this great book called The Unspoken Truths for Career Success. Really, really interesting. But she said that you should ask people, when you're asking for feedback, you should say, what do other people say about me? Because for some reason, when it's somebody else's perspective, people are more likely to be more transparent and honest than, like, what do you think of, what feedback would you offer me? So that's just a little tip on that. But
Mm.
that's one of the tangible ways that I see all the time. And that's another thing that we can all practice every day. Like, I don't know anyone, including myself, who's great at doing this. So it's a tangible, practical way to be generous, and we can all get better at it.
Yeah, and that's just because of the way we're wired, right? Like we're just, 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% of the thoughts we had today are the same ones we had yesterday,
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we're swimming upstream.
Right.
So it's a practice. But I love what you said about just practicing this and looking for those opportunities to do that. And because, even when we talk about layoffs, you mentioned that it is kindness to be like,
Hmm.
it's so important what you said. Like people think about kindness in a certain way, and we beat them ourselves up if we're not kind in the way that we think, or we judge other people if they're not, quote, kind in the way we think. But what could be more kind than seeing and respecting another human being enough to
Hmm.
say, like even companies that go through layoffs, like they feel so guilty, they feel terrible. But, when you're talking to them, sometimes some of the people they're laying off was like, it just wasn't a good fit, really wasn't a good fit. And so why is that not kind to
Hmm.
say to this person, like, whether you're saying it or not saying it, but knowing that they're going to thrive in another environment. Who
Mm-hmm.
wants to be in an environment where they're not appreciated because they're not thriving because it's not a good fit? Back
Right.
to your point of just, the genius, that
Mm-hmm.
just might not be your makeup.
Yes. Yeah, and I agree with that. And having lived through, my husband got laid off twice in his career. Interestingly, back to us moving to Pennsylvania, and I started Bridge Between. He got laid off right after we moved here,
Oh,
which was
wow.
like, whoa. But it really, put Bridge Between into high gear uh, out of necessity. But hindsight, looking back at that, it's like if those things didn't happen, he would never have found the career that he's in now. Now he's a counselor in a middle school, in a public middle school, and he was a science teacher in that same middle school. And it's so fulfilling. It's really what he should be doing. And he probably never would have gotten there had
Wow.
he stayed with the company that he was with. So I know that at the time, it's devastating when you lose your job and it feels really overwhelming. And those are real feelings and those are real concerns. But just to know that you are resourceful and gritty and meant for something else, like this is a sign that this wasn't meant for you as much as you think it should be. So I just think for those who are in that space right now, which I know a lot of people are, I would just say trust yourself, stay strong, and find ways to feed that inner person, because I think that that's really going to be your strength, is you being like solid and strong and knowing that you are worthy and have value and are loved. That is going to help you to kind of that light in me sees a light in you, like let that light shine so that other people can find you and that you can find that next opportunity. So I just want to reach out to those listening who are in that space, because it's a very lonely place.
Yeah.
Talk about like getting in your head, right? You
Yeah.
think of all the things I should have done, and I should have been more political, and I should have. And it's like, just don't do that to yourself.
Well, and to your point, using generosity is that too. Like if folks listening are in such a, because we do get in those places where it's like, ugh, I can't find the light in me. I don't feel that, great. Then how can you be generous? Generosity is an energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all energy, right?
Yes.
So if you're
Yeah.
generous with the person on the phone, if you're generous at the Wawa, we have a Wawa right around us. Now I need to go there
See?
more often. I got to
Yes, you
check it
do.
out.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody will open the door for you.
I'm going to go there now. Literally, there was one built just down the street. Um, you know, just try that. And then that energy feeds on more energy. And before you know it, that alone is going to draw you out of that place. And now your light's
Mhm.
going to shine because
Exactly.
you've lit a light in someone else, and it's
Mhm.
energy, and it keeps,
Exactly. Yeah,
moving.
and like Viktor Frankl said, like there's a space between stimulus and response.
Hmm.
And in that space is where our freedom lies. That's choice. He says it's choice, and that's where our freedom lies. So what I just want all of us to practice doing is just a little space, even if you could just put like a millisecond in between the stimulus, which is the thing that happened, the thing that somebody said, or the email they wrote, or the behavior that they exhibited, and then the response. Like if we could practice separating those things out and then put generosity in there in whatever form. And maybe it's self-compassion. That's the generosity you put in there. Like, I'm not going to take this personally because this really isn't about me. Or compassionate to others, right? Where you think they must be having a tough time. God, it looks like they are super stressed if they're going to send me an email like that. Whatever. Just put
Yeah.
something in there where you just get to, maybe you just breathe. You just breathe and get yourself back into the present moment so that you could be a little more like mindful and thoughtful before you respond, or maybe just don't respond right now because you're
That's
not
generous in and of
ready yet.
itself. That's a huge generosity. Just
Yeah.
to, like, when I keep my mouth shut, that is a very generous thing to do. And my kids, like, if you would just stop nagging, like,
Yeah.
that would
Uh-huh.
be
Yeah.
really, really generous of you right now. Like, it doesn't have to be hard,
Mhm.
right?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. Sometimes it's like doing less is doing more.
Well, yeah, particularly for overbearing mothers. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, just putting a space in between and just popping generosity in that space. What a great idea. And it's amazing too, because the world is just so stressed right now. When you can offer someone grace, or acknowledge their, instead of getting on their poor behavior, instead
Mm-hmm.
just, offering support,
Yeah.
that it's so disarming to, and I know the same is true of me. Like if I'm in a snit, and
Yeah.
my husband, comes up and, puts his hand around me and makes some joke or something, it just pulls me right out of it. He's like, having a
Yes.
great day. You're having a great day, aren't you?
Yes.
And it's like, it literally is so disarming.
Yes. Like an example of that, Abby, that just happened. I was in Penn Station. I had a suitcase, and I, for some reason, still take the subway everywhere. So I mean, I should just get an Uber, but I don't. I don't know why. Um, and so I'm schlepping this, and the escalator was broken. So now I'm hoofing up and down the stairs in Penn Station, and this person said, "Let me help you." And my first reaction was, "I got it, I got it." And then they said, "Let me help you." And they grabbed the bottom of my suitcase, and then the two of us walked down the stairs together. And I was like, thank you. Like, thank you for your grace. Thank you for like resisting my my rude rejection of your offer to help me. And I mean, I literally was just like, I had to stop and look up and say, all right, Lord, I'm sorry. Here I go again, just in my own head,
Yeah.
in my own, this is so unfair. And, I'm sweating. But I had this like, thank you for just waking me up in this. I wish that happened more often. I wish I woke up sooner, more regularly. But when I do, it is a great example of just how human I am, and then just
Yeah.
how grateful I can be, like in a second later.
And as you're saying that, I'm realizing, that the other side of this that we're discussing is the ability to receive, right? Because we
Yes.
do often just say, oh, no, no, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. It's actually incredibly generous to allow someone to give.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, especially like if you have a people pleaser type of saboteur or whatnot, which stems from really a thoughtful, giving, loving core. But when
Yeah.
you're under stress, and it turns into something else. And so many people think that I need to do everything myself. I need to constantly be giving. I can never receive, or if I do, it's selfish. But it's actually the opposite that's true, because think about, as to your point, how good it feels to give
Mm-hmm.
and to allow someone else to experience that feeling.
Right,
It's
because
generous.
they can't get the return on generosity if we're not ever enabling somebody to help us. And that does bring up a really good point. Is many people, and anyone I've ever interviewed says that they're bad at asking for help. So that's another small step we could make. And back to the teamwork and the geniuses, like, openly asking people for help on things that would be helpful to you, and that could enable them to use some of their geniuses or their expertise. It's an awesome way to be generous, because you're giving other people the opportunity. And most people don't want to offer unsolicited help, unlike this gentleman in Penn Station. Most people just are like, if they needed help, they'll ask me. But that's not true, really. So how
Right.
can we be a catalyst for that opportunity for others too?
Yeah, that's wonderful. You've really mentioned a lot of tips here, so I kind of want to just take a moment and circle back and name them. So one of them is asking for help, which you just said. Another one that I thought was fabulous was putting a space in between the stimulus and the response and just popping generosity in there.
Hmm.
And earlier, when you were talking about the leader, uh, you know, you gave another example around being kind, in that you're giving true feedback.
Hmm.
You also said paying attention to like a 6-to-1 ratio, that the positive feedback is 6-to-1.
Yeah.
And I think you gave about a billion other little small ways that leaders can really be impactful around practicing generosity.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is grounded in gratitude. That's the place. Like, if anybody's really viewing themselves as a beginner on this journey, I think the best place to start is gratitude, because it's a choice. Back to the stimulus response choice, right? Choice is where our freedom lies. So if we're choosing to be grateful, even when, so for the person who is out of work right now, right? For the person who's looking for business and it's not happening, for the person whose relationship is struggling or ending, for the person who can't get pregnant, who's been trying and trying and trying, right? It's hard to be grateful. The person who's losing a loved one, right? You have a loved one who's on hospice or is going through medical treatment or just diagnosed with something. Like, this is hard to be grateful in those situations. I would just challenge us to try to find something like the fact that you love that person so much. That's something to be grateful for. Like, you have the luxury
Yeah.
of knowing that person so much that it hurts, right? Versus someone else who doesn't even know that person, doesn't have that access. So I think for us to look for ways to be grateful in the workplace, there's gratitude all around us, and we miss it because we're focusing on what else and how I need to change and what I need to fix and my deadlines. And I get that, because that's being conscientious. But if we could pay attention to, like, the comfort of your chair, or the fact that you have heating or air conditioning, or that you have colleagues who you trust, or you have work that's intriguing to you, that it's a place for you to leverage your strengths, for you to learn something, for you to contribute something. There's so much that we could be grateful for. So I just ask everyone to think about that, because being grounded in gratitude is like a gateway, I think, to the rest of this. Because once we're grounded in gratitude, then we have abundance. And from that abundance, then we can pour out and be generous. So I don't think that we get the luxury of ROG, return on generosity, until we are grounded in gratitude.
And I think grounded is a really important word, because I'll add to that. It's more than just thinking about it, right? It's, you have to actually experience the feeling of it. So a lot of times, when you have this fabulous journal that I know has really become a bestseller, and I absolutely love it. I can't wait
Ah,
to
thank
send
you.
it to people myself. But it's 5-year journal about
Yes.
grounded
Yeah.
in gratitude. And yeah, I have mine
I'm just gonna look it up to see what
nearby as well.
today's is, because each day is like a quote,
Yeah.
and I want to see what.
And you just write one small thing.
Yeah, it's just one line a day. And what's great about it is it becomes like a chronicle of your gratitude, because you'll be
Yes.
like, 3 years ago today was the day that I had this call with Abby. You'll be in my
Yeah.
gratitude journal tonight. So today's quote says, "My friends give me a sense not only of who I am, but of what I truly can become." Potential.
That's fantastic. Right. And
Yeah, that's by Dan Garland. Dan Garland said that.
so you got different quotes from different people and put it at
Yes.
the top, and then it's every year on that day you see
Yeah,
that
it's
quote
just
and
one
write a
line
new
a day.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
show it to us. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say about when you're talking about thinking about gratitude, a tip I always talk to people is, because even when I'm writing, because now I write in my gratitude journal that you sent
Yes.
me as well, is taking that moment. It's so hard sometimes to take the moment and really, instead of just thinking about, oh, I'm grateful for this, write that down. Okay, now what's the next thing I have to do? But take a moment. Like, I even find my mind is like, oh, I don't have time to read the quote. I'll just write this thing, like, so that
Yeah.
I'm using it, like my mind wants to use it as like a tool to remember what happened last year. No, that's not the point. The
Yeah.
point is, sit down,
Yeah.
take a moment, and really experience the gratitude that you're feeling in this moment for this thing or this person,
Mhm.
because it is the experience of it. It's the feeling of it. It's not the thought that's going to change anything. It's the combination of the thought and the feeling. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I've had people who, like, if I'm doing like a leadership development program where we give them the gratitude journal in the beginning, and like that's part of their journey is that they practice. I've had people like at session 3 or 4 say, I've been writing that I'm grateful for my family every day. Like, that's wrong, right? Like, I should write about something else, right? Am I doing it wrong? And I said, oh my gosh, like, we're so self-critical that you're criticizing your
What
own
you're grateful for.
gratitude.
Yeah.
Like, if you're grateful for your family every day, that's beautiful. Like, why is that wrong? Doesn't that make you laugh?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Oh,
mean, we just, the degree to which we criticize ourselves. Well, I
oh,
mean, to me, that's the whole reason we criticize each other, is we're just
yes.
criticizing, it's not just to me, it's known. The more
Yeah.
self-critical we are, the more self-critical we'll be,
Hmm.
to others.
Right.
So
So
it
be
all really
kind.
does start
Whatever
with
you write in there, you can write the same. You can write your
like
dog every day
yourself.
if you want, if that's what you are in fact grateful for.
Yeah.
Don't judge yourself. It's your
Just be real.
journal.
Yeah, it's your journal. Just do what's right for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm curious about when you're working with, leaders who are trying to bridge generosity between cultures and ideological gaps and all of that kind of thing. Like what are some of the big challenges that they face?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's, I think, an ongoing thing. My belief is that in addition to generosity, what the world needs most, well, I guess there's three things: love, number one; generosity; and three would be curiosity. Because I think if we had more curiosity, if we truly wondered, and not from a place of so now I know, but so now I understand you, right? It's like different than just having facts and understanding things for the pure like education of it, but really for the connection of it. I think if we were more curious and wondered, like, what is it like to be seeing this from your perspective or from your, what's your context? Because I think the context is missing very often in like snippet dialogue or, online communication where people are, raging against each other. It's like, you're missing a lot of that individual's personal context. Like, why do they see it that way? And
Yeah.
try to wonder and understand. So I think for organizations that do it well, they respect the differences in a way that is like, the word belonging is one that a lot of organizations are focusing on. And that's just that the people can be who they are, how they are, and they still belong. Like they have a place, and their difference actually adds a benefit to the team or the organization because they're coming at it from a different lens. So just like in a guided way, I would say be more curious.
I love that so much. First of all, because it's simple. It's
Hmm.
not, you don't have to know all of the generational differences. You don't have to know all of the,
Hmm.
gender differences or all of those things.
Hmm.
It's just you have to be curious and isn't that a better way to do it anyway? Because if you have learned, oh, then you're generalizing. This group
Right.
of people thinks this way, this group of people needs that. That's
Yes.
not even necessarily true, right? So if you
Yes.
have created a culture where it's okay to ask,
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
and be curious and there's not defensiveness about it or whatnot. And, one of the things I talk about all the time, and I'm sure you do too, is that when we get into stress, we become so certain.
Hmm.
We are so certain. I know the
Yes.
best way. This is the only way. This is horrible. This is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We're
And then
just
we're
absolutely
closed.
certain,
Hmm. And then
and
we can stay stuck. If we're
yeah,
certain, we can be certain that we're going to stay stuck.
yeah,
So if you are instead open,
yeah,
even slightly open, then you're available to learn more. I mean, it's just, first of all, that makes life more interesting, right? I mean, having Groundhog Day, I don't know about anyone else listening, like that does not sound appealing to me
no,
because that means we're not growing. We're not ever getting better. We're not evolving. So, and I don't even think that that's possible because I think to be a human, we are growing. So, like it or not, you're growing. So, I think for us to get unstuck and be open and just ask the question, like, I wonder how that could be, or what might make that true, or in what way might that be beneficial to someone. And I know right now with the polarization of at least in the U.S., like it being curious is essential
yeah,
because otherwise we're going to implode.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I love that from so many avenues. And one thing is that I think, leaders and people at work, they're so stressed and feeling like they have to know everything. And just having the simple tip of like, well, what if you were just curious? Like what a breath of fresh air that is. That's
Yeah.
easy. I can try that.
Hmm.
I can do that, and just
Yes.
for people at home to like practice, like, okay, if I'm feeling really, really at odds or there's some type of being curious can feel so threatening sometimes. I mean, and I know I've
Mm.
experienced that myself, like definitely in the past. It's like if I'm having a big difference of opinion with someone or whatever, the ego wants to hold on
Mhm.
to everything that, you know what's right. And if I were to admit that this other person were right, like I don't even want to ask because I don't even want to know,
Mhm.
because that would mean I'm wrong. No, it doesn't have to be all black and white. Like the ego is going to get all worked up about that. But
Yes.
what if you could just assume that, there's love in everyone's heart, and
Mhm.
be curious about why someone's coming across the way they are, or what's happening, with the way that they're behaving, or curious about, like, hey, you're different from me. Let me, what needs to happen here? Are you comfortable in this area, in this arena?
Mhm.
Are there new things we need to do?
Yeah.
Or whatever, however you take it. Like curiosity can be used in so many different
Mhm.
ways.
And I think sometimes people demonstrate this knowing in other ways. And what I mean by that is, and I don't mean any disrespect for humanity to compare them to canines and dogs, but I think for some people, like they'll rescue a dog and then they know that that dog is damaged because it's been treated badly, it's been abused or whatever, and it's maybe left on the side of the road, and now it's been found, and now you adopt this dog. So you understand that that dog has challenges because of how it's been treated,
Mm,
and the human has compassion and works through it. And I just don't see us being as kind and willing and generous with other humans who also have been damaged, who also
right.
have been treated badly
Every single
and
one of us,
left on the side of
probably.
the road,
Right.
in the
Emotionally.
metaphorical kind of way. And all of us have, right? We've all been treated badly. So like I just think if we could extend that, and maybe you're more into cat rescue or something else, but whatever that is for you, like the thing that you tend to have a heart for, I
Yeah.
think that is a great place for you to get curious about, like, what is it about that I am so generous about, that I could bring some of that same knowing and that same practice, because it's like, how to do it, we're just selective about where we're offering that generosity.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Oh my gosh, you've offered so much. What I really want to encourage listeners to do is go back with a pen and a pencil, a pen and a paper, and listen to this episode again, and listen to all of the things that Shannon, the nuggets that she tossed out, because there really were
Thank you.
so many. And maybe just take one a day and like meditate on it a little bit and think, okay, well, this week I'm going to implement this. I'm going to implement curiosity. This week I'm going to implement, I'm going to work on putting that stop in between the stimulus and response. This week I'm going to really look at what I think of as kindness, or how am I judging myself? There was
Mhm.
just so many. So I'm really grateful for you being here. And I want to hear, before we go, two things. First, what would you like to leave people with? If you wanted people to know, like, one thing that, if you could just leave everybody with just one message, what's the most important message to you that you
Love
think?
one another.
Love one another. Love that. And
Mm.
I love the way you're saying it too, because it's like, no, like for real.
For real. Like, love one another. We're all good. We're all love. And we just have to sometimes chisel away at the exterior, right? That's the ego. Like you talk about, it's just like, can we just see that? If you could look for that, and then you could have compassion, like, oh, I get it. You're stuck in your ego.
Yeah.
Or for yourself, when I'm stuck in my own ego, right? It's like, of course, because you're human. So you're gonna get snagged there sometimes. But just
Yeah.
love it, love each other through it, love yourself through it.
Love it. And where can people find you? I know you've got a new course, you've got a couple of books. And I'll put
Yes,
it on the
yes. Well,
show
I think
notes,
the
but where can we
easiest, and
find
it
it?
takes you to bridgebetween.com, which is a lot of characters, but shannoncassidy.com takes you to bridgebetween.com. So everything's on there. The podcast, the course, your episode is on there. The services. So I think bridgebetween.com would be the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for being here. This was amazing. I know the listeners are going to get a ton out of it. And I just really appreciate you and everything you're doing in the world.
Thank you. Namaste, Abby.
Namaste.